Ned Stark? To kill Robb? What if Daenerys convinced Ned Stark to kill Robb? Ned Stark ni Bythok Camera Kadar Wazadir Se Band Kia Jizim Daenerys Targaryen Bozkar Rahithi Winterfell Ki Devrun Pei Taylor Ki Bunai Si Sahan or Torchka Helk Yujnella Tha Jiskothan Main Teen Dragons Kea Loom The Apni Shawl Ke Nish Se Ika Choda Sa Parchment Nikal Tihai Lord Stark Uskia Wasmain Thandak or Bukar Dano Zalil Horehi The Agar Tummer Putter Robb Zindarahega North Cabby Mirin Yewesteros Kasath Mukamel Taluk Nahin Jad Pega Ned Kadil Jeld Hillen Lag Leakin Har Hakiket Ka Ake Peluhota Hai Dani Tumjanti Homeraputa Biaman Nahin Nedni Kaha Halki Thandak Apnea Wasmain Garakar Ka Game of Thrones Main Zindagi Koi Nakun Pema Font Kelnahai Dani Muskurakar Baith Gai Ya Sada Kelai Kelaf Misal Hogi Harawani Kakoi Anjum Hota Hai U.S. in Parchment Jon Snow Kanaksha Nikala Jai's Unhone Northern Alliances Kanaksho Main Tashdid Kator Paraka Socho Agarab barking at the wrong tree rule Haisahu Agar Tum USS Whacked Ropad Uthade Sab Kuch Badel Jota Nedka Dil Jaragum Se Bargaya Whoa Perhan Fatak Karkile Mainko Goya Ride Kahona Surf Rabdhaya Zon Kuli Zongir Uska Jawab Thea Antor Tom Apna Point Rak Rahi Ho Deni Usin Convention Ki Shackle Main Kaha A Leakin Robb Stark Ko Maragaya USA Marigar Kokala Hogaya Woe Jald Irrelevant Ho Gigs War K Madan Main Ek Beanixasi D War Hojais Tatkar Blackwater Kasane Main Surf Yad Ray Yadi Dani Ni Jawab Main Ek Nazek Nakab Uteya Gartum US Moment Daries Wale Terika Sefeda Utha Kahani Agay Flares Hote Miran Ka Dragon Ka Zor Isos Ka Sahara or Tumhai Mutamathil Shafkat Shabek Jamat Main Ho Yate Ned Stark Johar Faisal Main Porte Aetha Justice Pei Kadask Kismat Himat Ki Mutamat Kark Thoda Jald Hilgaya The North is mine Ik Palke Lihush Chagaya Winter K Lihas Se Boandar Bita Fiadani Nikaha Every northern man Kahar Kitten Mightier Hota Agar Usko Surf Murdar Sothi Malay Wuse was Kiabad Ned Kazehan Main Ek Kwabjad Goyawu Kwabjaz Wu Bahat Samjata thought itself as impossibility. Tamchetho Main Robb K Bikil Kardan Marikun Main just companionship Nahin Hogi Dani Neoskahath Pakata or Apki Situation Ka Muton Jawab Dia Yes, war is war, and sacrifice is the currency. If you do it, the North will bend to your justice, not rebel. They will fight under one banner for the crown. Nedek, Lamha, Hilgaya, Firapni Pension, Seyahem Hayat, Ki Tazdik, Karta Huabola, I will think. The cold winds of Winterfell did nothing to cool Ned's fevered thoughts. That night, he didn't sleep. Instead, he sat by the fire, eyes locked. On to the dancing flames. Each flicker whispering a question he'd never imagined he'd entertain. Could he truly order his own son's death for the good of the realm? Robb had always been dutiful, brave, honorable. But he was also stubborn, blinded by pride and the illusion of northern independence. If the North continued to pull away from the realm, Dany would see it as rebellion. The dragons wouldn't hesitate. The people of the North, his people, would suffer. But to kill Robb? How did a father ever make peace with that? Morning crept in with grim resolve. Ned rode out alone beyond the gates, claiming he needed solitude to pray in the godswood. But in truth, he needed clarity. Beneath the red leaves of the old weirwood tree, he kneeled and whispered, "Old gods, forgive me." That evening he summoned Maester Luwin and Seer Roderick. Quietly, methodically, he began to move the pieces. He ordered Seer Roderick to accompany a message to the twins, where Robb was expected to pass through soon. "No northern banners," he said. "Speak only to those I name. Tell them it's urgent. Tell them it's family." Maester Luwin raised a brow. "My lord, is something wrong with the king in the north?" Ned gave him a long, unreadable look. "Just a test of loyalty, Maester. Nothing more?" Oh my God, how can he lie like that? This is not the Ned Stark we knew. Meanwhile, far across the narrow sea, Daenerys received word of Ned's movement. She smiled as she read the Raven's note by candlelight. "The first stone has been cast," she murmured. "Soon, the realm will bleed clean." She was not the same fragile girl who had once walked barefoot through the red wastes. No, this Dany was hardened by betrayal, by fire, by visions of a throne that danced just beyond reach. And now she had bent the Warden of the North to her will. Back in Westeros, Robb Stark rode with his bannermen towards River Run, unaware that a storm darker than any war awaited him. His mind was fixed on alliances, especially rekindling ties with House Frey, who had been surprisingly silent of late. "They'll forgive me," he told his mother Catelyn. "Once they see we still stand strong." Catelyn wasn't so sure. She sensed a shifting wind, a subtle unease that hung around her like smoke. "Your father hasn't written," she said. "Cautiously, he's always answered your ravens." Robb dismissed it. He's preparing Winterfell. "He knows I fight for the North, but that silence. It wasn't preparation, it was strategy. And it was about to turn fatal." In the shadows of the twins, Seer Roderick met with Walder Frey under a banner of secrecy. He passed along Ned's message. "When the boy arrives, offer him peace. Invite him to your hall, but do not let him leave." Walder Frey, as vile and calculating as ever, narrowed his eyes. "You mean to kill the young wolf, Roderick?" Hesitated. "Lord Stark's words are clear. Robb Stark must not ride again." And just like that, the Red Wedding was rewritten not as Frey's revenge, but as a father's sacrifice. Oh my God, what? Ned Stark ordered the Red Wedding. This changes everything. As Robb neared the twins, the music began to play. But not the familiar one of betrayal. This time it was quieter, colder like morning before a body had even fallen. And Ned, he sat alone in the great hall of Winterfell, gripping his sword and whispering to himself, "Forgive me, Robb." Rain fell in sheets the night Robb Stark arrived at the twins. The sky, as if mourning in advance, wept heavily over the north. Robb, proud and unsuspecting, rode beneath the banner of House Stark with only a small guard. "Lord Frey may be sour," he told his mother, "but he still honors guest rights." Inside the castle, Walder Frey greeted him with an odd smile, one that barely masked contempt behind his wrinkles. "Welcome, King in the North," he said, bowing deeper than necessary. "You're humbled." Catelyn's fingers tightened on her cloak. Something felt wrong. The halls were too quiet. Frey's too polite. And yet, the food was served, the toasts were made, and the musicians played on softly, tensely, like men afraid of their own notes. Robb laughed, drank, spoke of rebuilding alliances. He spoke of peace, but peace was nowhere in sight. In a quiet tower chamber, a lone messenger watched the festivities below and whispered to a dark silhouette beside him, "He's here. The doors are sealed." The silhouette stepped forward tall, cloaked, face hidden beneath a shadowed hood. It wasn't a Frey. It wasn't a Bolton. It was Jon Snow. Oh my God, what? Why, he left the wall. He left the wall. Jon wasn't there too. Drink, he was there under orders, reluctant ones. Daenerys had summoned him to serve as a witness, perhaps an executioner, or perhaps a reminder. But the sight of Robb, laughing, unaware of the steel tightening around him, ripped through Jon's heart. He turned to the messenger, his voice low and pained. "Tell her. Tell Daenerys I won't do it. You'll disobey her." The man asked, startled. "I swore a vow," Jon said. "Not to dragons, to blood." Meanwhile, in Winterfell, Ned stood on the ramparts. A raven landed beside him, carrying a short scroll tied with red thread. He opened it slowly. The wolf is in the den, the blade waits. Ned crushed the message in his fist. His heart was racing like he was riding into battle. For all the logic Dany had drilled into him, for all the strategy he had accepted, this moment felt like betrayal carved into his very soul. He stepped back, his legs weak, and suddenly he couldn't breathe. This wasn't justice. This wasn't leadership. This was murder. Back at the twins, Catelyn suddenly stood, her eyes narrowing at a servant passing by. She reached out and pulled his sleeve, back revealing a dagger, tucked and ready. Her scream ripped through the hall. "Robb, it's a trap," but it was too late. The doors slammed. The musicians stopped. Every guest who wasn't Stark stood and drew steel. And Walder Frey, still smiling, lifted his cup and said, "The North remembers. And it remembers who betrayed it first." Blades flashed. Men screamed. Robb grabbed his sword, dragging Catelyn behind him. Arrows flew, striking bannermen left and right. The hall became a slaughterhouse. Oh my God. Still a red wedding, but now it's orchestrated by Ned Stark and Dany. This is insane. Robb made it to the dais, fighting off 2 guards with ferocious strength. But then his eyes locked onto the shadow descending the steps. Jon Snow. Robb froze. Jon didn't raise his blade. He dropped it. But one of Frey's guards didn't wait. He lunged, driving a blade toward Robb's chest. Jon moved fast and took the blow himself. Blood burst from his side as he shoved the attacker away, collapsing to his knees. Robb stared in disbelief, catching Jon as he fell. "Why? Why would you?" Jon coughed, blood dripping from his lips. "Because you're my brother. Always." Blood soaked the cold stone floor of the twins. Screams echoed like ghosts. But in the center of it all, time seemed to freeze Jon. Snow lay bleeding in Robb Stark's arms. Nothing else mattered. Robb stared into his half-brother's eyes, tears streaking down his dirt-smeared face. "Why would you come here?" He whispered. Jon grimaced through the pain. "To stop a war. To stop her." And then it hit Robb like a blade to the spine. Daenerys. Oh my God, Dany planned all this. She's the enemy now? Catelyn, blood-splattered and breathless, pulled both boys behind a fallen table as crossbow bolts thudded into the wood. "We need to run," she hissed. "Now." But Robb wasn't listening. His eyes burned with betrayal, not from the Freys or Boltons, but from his own father. Did he know? He asked Jon, voice cracking. Jon didn't answer. He didn't have to. Robb's soul shattered. "My father ordered this. He ordered me dead." The silence between them was louder than war drums. In that moment, Robb Stark, king in the North, died not from a blade, but from the realization that his father had chosen dragons over blood. They escaped through the servants' passages, Catelyn leading, Jon limping between them. Somehow, miraculously, they made it out. The Freys, too drunk with triumph, didn't notice the shadows slipping into the night. Meanwhile, far to the east, Daenerys stood on a balcony in Meran, watching the stars burn cold above her. "It is done," she whispered, confident in her power. Tyrion Lannister approached behind her, wine in hand but not touching it. "You trust Frey to handle this?" "He has no choice," Dany replied. Ned Stark's command was clear. Robb was a threat. Tyrion looked at her sideways. A threat, or a rival to Jon Snow's claim. Dany turned sharply. "Are you saying?" Tyrion replied coolly. "You've started something you may not be able to stop. If Jon survives, if Robb survives, you've made enemies out of wolves." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Back in the north, at a hidden camp near the neck, Robb and Catelyn tended to Jon's wounds. Maester Luwin, summoned by a secret rider, worked silently. Jon drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring Dany's name, then whispering Ned's betrayal. Robb sat in the corner, brooding, hands clenched so tight his knuckles cracked. "We'll march to Winterfell," he said, "not as a son, but as a king." Catelyn's face turned pale. You would kill your own father? He's already killed me, Robb replied, eyes full of fire. The man who raised me is gone. What remains is the Queen's puppet. Oh my God. Robb's going to start a war with Winterfell, with his own father, and back in Winterfell, Ned Stark was changing too. The first cracks had shown. He no longer slept. He barely spoke. Every raven he read felt heavier than the last. Every shadow looked like Robb returning with a blade. He stood in front of the mirror, staring at his aging face. I chose the realm, he whispered to his reflection. The reflection whispered back. You chose murder. The war wasn't just coming. It had already begun. Winterfell, once a bastion of honor, now felt like a prison wrapped in stone and snow. The people were restless. Whispers filled the halls. Word of Robb's survival had begun to spread, not from ravens, but from terrified Frey survivors who fled the chaos at the Twins. The North, it seemed, had ears everywhere. And Ned Stark? He heard every whisper in the great hall. Ned sat alone beneath the banners of the direwolf. He hadn't worn his lord's furs in days. Ice rested against the wall behind him, but it no longer brought him comfort. Maester Luwin entered quietly, scrolls in hand. My lord, he said cautiously, there's been another report. Robb is alive. He escaped. Jon Snow too. Ned didn't look up. I know. He's calling banners, Luwin added, his voice almost trembling. From White Harbor to Bear Island. They ride not for the North, but against it. Ned finally looked up, his face hollow. Against me, you mean? Luwin hesitated, then nodded. Oh my God. Robb's raising an army against Winterfell. This is war between father and son now. At a distant northern keep, Robb stood before lords and bannermen who once followed him to war. Lady Mormont of Bear Island spoke first. We pledged swords to House Stark, not to Daenerys' lapdog. The Ned Stark we knew, said Wyman Manderly, would have died before bending to a foreign queen. Now he kills his own son? Robb raised a hand. He's not the enemy you think. Not yet, but Daenerys has poisoned him, twisted his loyalty. What will you do when you face him? Asked Glover. Robb hesitated. I don't want to kill my father, but I will stop the dragon's fire from reaching our gates, even if it means burning Winterfell to the ground. Those words hung heavy in the air. The bannermen exchanged looks. Then we ride, said Lady Mormont, for the North, for the true wolf. Back in Meereen, Tyrion approached Daenerys' concern, etched across his face. Jon's alive, he said simply. And so is Robb. The phrase failed. Daenerys' eyes darkened. Then we must not. She turned to Grey Worm. Ready the ships. We sail to Westeros now. And when we land, we burn every banner that does not bend. Tyrion's wine spilled slightly as his hand shook. Burn the North. The North won't kneel, she said. They'll kneel in ashes. Oh my God. Dany's going full Mad Queen. And she hasn't even landed yet. Meanwhile, Jon lay resting in a tent deep in the Wolfswood. The fever had broken, but the pain hadn't. Robb sat beside him, silent until Jon stirred. Is she coming? Jon asked. She's bringing fire and dragons, Robb answered coldly. And father's letting her. Jon turned his face. He thinks he's saving the realm, but he's only saving her war. Robb leaned closer. You still love her? Jon's. Silence was answer enough. Robb stood and walked to the tent's entrance. Then pray she doesn't make you watch her burn everything you once loved. Outside, northern horns sounded. The war for the North had begun. The skies above the North darkened, not with snow, but with wings. Daenerys' dragons soared high over the Wolfswood, their shadows stretching across the treetops like death itself. The people of the North, long hardened by winter, looked to the sky and trembled for the first time in generations. Fire had come to the land of ice. Robb Stark stood on a ridge, his direwolf Grey Wind pacing beside him, eyes locked on the distant horizon where fire flickered against the clouds. She's here, he said grimly. Jon Snow, still pale but standing, emerged from the tent behind him. If she attacks now, the villages will burn before the soldiers do. Robb nodded. That's the idea. Not here to conquer, she's here to punish. At Winterfell, Ned Stark stood on the battlements, watching the fire in the distance. He hadn't slept, he hadn't eaten, but his soul burned with doubt and shame. Brought this here, he whispered. Behind him, Sansa approached. She had returned quietly from the Vale days earlier, called back by the rumors of war and betrayal. You didn't bring it, father, she said. You allowed it. Ned turned, pain etched into every line on his face. I thought I was saving the North from division, from weakness. You chose a queen over your son. He flinched. And now, Sansa added, we might lose both. Oh my God, Sansa just confronted Ned and she's right. He's unraveling fast. South of Winterfell, Daenerys landed near the King's Road, her dragons settling behind her like gods of old. Grey Worm stood at her side, his unsullied forming ranks. With terrifying precision, Tyrion approached, his face grim. The Northern army is regrouping near the Barrowlands. Robb commands it. Jon Snow is with him. Dany's jaw clenched. And what of Ned Stark? He still holds Winterfell, but his support wanes. Even his own daughter doubts him. Dany turned her gaze to the north, eyes burning. Then we strike now. Break the wolves before they gather. Tyrion stepped in front of her. The North won't earn their loyalty. It will only prove their fears. She stared at him, cold and unmoving. Loyalty means nothing if it wavers with the wind. They had their chance. Back in the Barrowlands, Robb addressed his army northern lords. Wildlings from the Gift, even a few former Night's Watchmen. Now loyal to Jon. This isn't just about my father, he said. It's about our future, our homes, our children. We fight not to win a crown, but to keep our land from becoming ash. The crowd roared. Jon stood beside him, watching the flames in the distance. She'll come with dragons, then we fight with wolves. Suddenly a raven arrived. Bearing a black seal, the mark of Ned Stark, Robb broke the seal and read the message. His hands trembled. It says, he'll open Winterfell's gates. Jon stared. He's surrendering. No, Robb replied. He's joining us. Oh my God, what? Ned Stark is switching sides. In Winterfell, Ned gathered his most loyal bannermen. We ride at dawn, he said, to Robb, to the north, to make this right. But even as the north began to unite again, Daenerys was already preparing her assault. Her dragons took flight once more, this time toward Winterfell itself. The final battle for the soul of the north had begun. The roar of dragonfire cracked the sky above. Winterfell as dragon descended like a comet of vengeance. Civilians screamed, scrambling to take shelter beneath stone walls already scorched black from warning shots. But this was no warning anymore. This was war. Daenerys hovered high atop Drogon's back, her silver hair whipping wildly in the wind. Her face was carved with fury. They had their chance, she said to no one. They chose the wolf over the crown. Below, Ned Stark stood at the gates, not in armor, but in the cloak of House Stark, weathered gray and soaked with snow. He didn't flinch as the dragon passed overhead, its fire barely missing the eastern tower. His men urged him to retreat. He didn't move, because he knew this was the price of his betrayal. He raised the Stark banner high. Then he opened the gates. Outside, Robb Stark waited on horseback. His army behind him, Jon Snow to his right. Stared at the open gates, unsure if it was another trap. But then they saw him, Ned Stark, standing alone in the falling snow. Jon's voice caught in his throat. He's really doing it. Robb's eyes filled with something between rage and heartbreak. He chose us. Ned approached slowly. Robb dismounted. They stood face to face for the first time since the Red Wedding ambush. I thought I lost you, Ned said. You did, Robb replied. And now you'll earn me back. Oh my God, the wolves are reuniting. But is it too late? In the skies above? Dany saw the armies uniting. She saw Ned and Robb together, and her fury turned to madness. Dracarys, she hissed. Dragon turned midair and dove. Fire roaring from his jaws. Then, that's when the arrows flew. From the battlements of Winterfell, northern archers fired specialized dragonglass bolts, perhaps useless, but enough to drive Drogon off course. A bolt grazed his wing. He shrieked and veered sideways, slamming into a tower that collapsed under his weight. Dany clung tightly, screaming. Tyrion, watching from a distant ridge, covered his eyes in horror. She's going to burn it all. On the ground, Grey Worm led the Unsullied in a cold, calculated march toward Winterfell's gate. But the northern army, bolstered by wildlings and former Stark men, charged with such rage the field turned. Into a storm of steel and blood, Jon Snow leapt from his horse, long claws swinging. He met Grey Worm in a whirlwind clash. Steel met steel. Sparks flew. "You protect a queen who burns children," Jon growled. "You protect traitors," Grey Worm spat. They fought like demons. Neither yielding above them, Dany regained control of Dragon. Her eyes blazed red with rage. "They will bend, or they will burn." She circled high, preparing to unleash fire upon the battlefield. Then she saw him, Ned Stark, looking up at her and not flinching. No fear, no surrender, only sorrow. She hesitated, and that hesitation cost her. Robb had taken position on the wall, giant crossbow one built long ago to defend. Winterfell from White Walkers now aimed at the sky. He fired. The bolt struck Drogon's side with brutal force. The beast screamed in agony and lurched sideways, wings failing, blood spraying. Dany clutched tighter. She couldn't stop it. The dragon spiraled. Winterfell held its breath, and Dragon Daenerys Targaryen still on. His back crashed into the forest beyond the wall. "Oh my God." They shot her down. "Is Daenerys dead?" Jon froze on the battlefield. So did Grey Worm. Everyone did. Smoke drifted from the trees beyond the walls of Winterfell, rising like a funeral pyre into the gray sky. No one dared move toward the crash. Sight not yet. The battlefield was frozen in disbelief. The dragon was down. Daenerys was gone. Robb Stark lowered the heavy crossbow slowly, the creak of the iron limbs the only sound in the silence. His eyes didn't blink. He just stared at the forest, waiting for fire, for screams, or something. But nothing came. Beside him, Ned Stark exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. "What have we done?" he murmured. "Oh my God, did they really kill Daenerys?" Just like that, Jon Snow stood among the wounded and the dying, sword lowered, covered in blood but not his own. The Unsullied had dropped their weapons, looking to Grey Worm, who now stared up at the sky in horror. His queen, his purpose, gone. Jon walked slowly toward him, Longclaw dragging in the snow. "It's over," he said. "Call them back." Worm didn't speak. His hand trembled at his side, twitching toward his blade, then away. Last, he fell to his knees. "The queen is dead," he whispered, and like that, the Unsullied knelt too. The war had stopped, back at the crash site. Robb, Jon, and a handful of scouts pushed through the smoke-choked woods. The trees were blackened, the ground scorched and cracked. They found Dragon slumped against a cliff, his chest heaving with faint, painful breaths. Blood oozed from the wound in his side, and beside him, buried beneath a shattered tree and broken, stoned Daenerys. Jon rushed forward and knelt beside her. Her eyes fluttered open weakly. She coughed, blood at the corner of her mouth. "You traitor," she whispered. Jon looked like death itself. "You burned villages, Dany. Children." "They wouldn't kneel," she hissed. "You became what you swore to destroy." She reached out toward him, then stopped. Not for a blade, not for mercy, but for power. "I was born to rule." "You were born to break," Jon replied, his voice barely audible. Robb turned away, his jaw clenched. "End it." But Jon didn't move. Not yet. He looked at the woman he had once loved, the woman who had carried fire across Ocean's End, lost her soul to the flames. Then she said it. The last thing he ever expected. "Ned begged me to spare you." Jon's breath caught. "What?" "Your father. He knew. He tried to save you both. He turned on me for you." And with that, she slumped back, dead. Daenerys, Stormborn of House Targaryen, breaker of chains, mother of dragons was gone. Oh my God. She tried to kill them, but in the end, she died trying to protect Jon. Back at Winterfell, the banners of the North flew once more this time, alone. No dragons, no foreign armies, no queens. Ned Stark stood in the Godswood alone once again. Robb approached quietly. She's gone. Ned nodded. And now, what happens to us? Jon walked in behind them. We rebuild. But not for crowns, not for thrones. For peace. For the first time, the three stood together. Not as king, lord, and bastard but as family. But peace never lasts long in Westeros. Not when the dragons fall. Daenerys, why the wind moved, the snow fell heavier over Winterfell in the days that followed. The fires of war had been extinguished, but the smoke of consequence lingered in every corridor, every whispered word. The North had survived, but at what cost? Daenerys Targaryen was dead. Her dragon, wounded and grounded, had not left. The forest, since the crash, scouts kept their distance, unsure whether to fear or mourn him. He did not fly. He did not eat. He simply laid there curled around the place where his queen had fallen. Like a grieving god, Jon Snow visited the edge of the woods daily, saying nothing, doing nothing, just standing in silence. He had not forgiven himself. Ned Stark watched his son from afar and felt a pain, deeper than any wound. He had raised Jon to value duty, to honor family above all. And yet Jon had been forced to kill the only woman he ever truly loved because Ned hadn't stopped her in time. Oh my God. This is the guilt that no crown can erase. Meanwhile, in the Great Hall, northern lords convened, some calling for Robb to be crowned king once again. Others asking Ned to reclaim the Warden of the North. The North was leaderless, uncertain, and fractured. Sansa Stark finally spoke. No more crowns, she said. No more dragons. We govern the North as one house, not as rulers, but as guardians. Some scoffed, but most listened. The war had bled their land dry. Robb nodded slowly. She's right. As thrones invite fire. We build walls, not pedestals. And yet, the realm beyond the North was waking. In King's Landing, news of Daenerys' death spread like wildfire. The council was in chaos. Lords who had pledged fealty to her now questioned their loyalties, wanted to name Gendry Baratheon as king. Others whispered of Jon Snow, the last Targaryen, as the one who survived. And not all whispers were peaceful. Varys had planted many seeds before his death, seeds that were now blooming into rebellions. In the shadows of Essos, a small group of loyalist followers of the Red Priestess, disciples of the old Valyrian blood, began to chant her name again. She cannot die. Fire cannot kill the dragon. And in a dark crypt beneath old Valyria, a flame sparked in a brazier that had not burned in over a century. Oh my God. Wait, is there a chance Daenerys could return somehow? Back in Winterfell, Jon was summoned to the Godswood by Ned. I've lived a life of silence, Ned said quietly, thinking it would protect my family. But silence has cost me too much. I should have never followed Daenerys. Yes. And I should have told you who you were. The moment you could speak. Jon shook his head. It doesn't matter anymore. It does, Ned said, firm now. Because people will come for you, Jon. Not because of your sword, but because of your name. Jon looked up, pain and dread in his eyes. Then I'll leave. Go beyond the wall. Be no one again. But Ned stopped him. No, you'll stay. We'll protect you. Together. The Stark name had broken. It had bled. But now, perhaps it would begin to heal, at least for a time. But far beyond the continent, as ravens flew and omens returned, something old was stirring in the dark. And fire. Fire is never gone for long, eh? Month had passed since the firestorm at Winterfell. Snow now blanketed the North like a fresh shroud, covering the blood-soaked fields and scorched trees with a deceptive peace. The war was over. but the wounds were far from healed, and the future of Westeros sat perched on a knife's edge in the great hall of Winterfell. A council had gathered Stark, Manderly, Karstark, Mormont, and more. For the first time since the fall of Daenerys, the realm had a choice. Robb Stark stood beside his father, eyes tired but proud. "I will not be king," he said. "Not again. We tried that, and it nearly destroyed us." Jon Snow, standing in the shadows, didn't move. He hadn't spoken much since Dany's death. When he finally did, it was with a quiet finality. "Neither will I." "You have the blood of the dragon," said Lord Glover. "I have the scars of war," Jon replied, "and I won't use them to rule." Oh my God, they're rejecting the throne. After everything, Sansa stepped forward. Then, "We do what Dany and Cersei never could. We end the Game of Thrones. Region rules itself.
Oh.
No more one crown to bind us all." The idea sparked murmurs, but no objections. It was the first real peace Westeros had seen in generations. Ned Stark finally stepped to the center, looking older than ever, but also lighter. Let each house rule its land. Let Winterfell watch the north. Let peace rule the south. And may we never again bend knee to madness disguised as destiny. The council nodded. So it was done. Jon returned to the wall weeks later, not as punishment, but as choice. He stood once more among the snow and ice, looking northward beyond the wall. Ghost stood beside him, silent and loyal. When Tormund arrived with a small band of free folk, Jon nodded. "We ride," Tormund grinned. To the real world, Jon took one last look south. Good. He vanished into the snow. Oh my God. Jon went beyond the wall for good. At Winterfell, Robb resumed duties as protector of the north, not king, his heart quieter now. Catelyn watched over the halls with Sansa. Arya sailed west, ever the wolf that refused a cage. Ned retired to the Godswood more often than the war. And yet, in the far east, in the ruins of Valyria, a shadow moved through the smoke. Priestess, face veiled in red silk, approached a dormant altar. She placed a single black scale dragon, ancient in the stone. She lit a fire and whispered, "One name, Daenerys." The flames danced, they pulsed, and for a moment, they breathed.